and welcome to AI People. Today we're talking to Darryl Williams, who is CEO at Partsol, which is a cognitive AI company promising a new evolution in the AI industry. Greetings, Darryl.
Greetings, it's a pleasure to be here.
So we always kick things off by asking the same questions to each guest that we have on, asking you to make some predictions about the AI industry as a whole. I know people love making predictions about AI, but I think it's interesting to kind of get a guide or some data points of where kind of leaders in the industry see that we're at on these things. So the first one is, how do you see humans and AI collaborating with regard to work in 5 years' time and then in 15 years' time?
Wow, okay, 5 years' time and 15 years' time. It really depends on whether we're continuing on the same trajectory we are now, or if we get off that trajectory. Because right now, the current trajectory is dumping hundreds of billions of dollars to try to make things go faster, look better, do crazy things, but not become more accurate. It is the generative AI and all the other AI, it seems to be locked at that 88% accuracy level. And so if we stay on this trajectory, our deep fakes are going to be so much better. Our ability to dabble around what is trustworthy and not is going to be so much better. But ultimately, it's not going to be revolutionary because at very basic, no one's going to trust it. And so if we stay on that trajectory, what you're going to see in 50 years from now is going to be about the same as 15 years. It's just going to be more widespread in everyone's life. And it's going to be something that everybody has, but when it becomes important, nobody is going to trust. If, on the other hand, they change trajectories where accuracy is addressed first and foremost, then at that point there, 5 years, you could see cures for diseases and economic situations which would have baffled the people today. And 50 years from now, we will not be considering the same world that we live in today, just because that which is an existential threat of today will not be then. It will be completely different. So it just depends on your trajectory.
Yeah, okay. And where do you see we are in the kind of march towards AGI? Do you think that's something that's close or still 20 years away?
I think it's still 20 years away. I think so. I just don't see, there's too much more they have to do. They have to lock down this accuracy issue. They just, without that, everything is just a gimmick. So.
Yeah, and the answer to this next one might be the same as your first one, like kind of depending on the trajectory and where we set out from here. But like, how do you see kind of AI reshaping the global economy? You know, do you think it's going to mean more greater wealth inequality, or do you think it will narrow gaps in opportunity for people?
See, so we'll get to this eventually, but our AI is different in that it is based on absolute truth, and it's grounded on foundational science. And so when we start talking about AI and cognitive AI, which we are, people tend to want to talk about ethics. And so the idea is let's say that the AI detects a new type of technology which makes petroleum-based economies obsolete. Is it ethical to actually release that kind of a capability, knowing that by doing so, you're collapsing huge world economies around the world, but at the same time, you're building up new type of economic architectures? Most people would say that's not ethical. Well, then is it ethical to withhold that information when you're keeping countries that could be first world and you're leaving them in third world? Well, that's not ethical either. So people tend to think about ethics on a line. with either A or B. But in reality, when we start talking about AI that could actually change economies and make things better for the world, the AI has to be across the whole spectrum. So the answer is you find this AI finds a new type of technology that makes the petroleum-based economies obsolete, but at the same time, it goes into those petroleum-based economies and gives them a new vector for which they can continue to generate their livelihood. So it all comes down to accuracy and depth, because the AI is going to make massive changes. But unless you're able to react to those changes, you're going to have a world completely out of balance. Last example that I was given once in ethics is, let's say that our cognitive AI finds a cure for cancer that some people believe is there, and now people live 160, 170 years. Now you have a population of 20 billion people, which the world can't handle. Is that ethical? Well, your same AI is then going to give you better ways of managing space, either in space, underwater, or somewhere else. So the AI has to be multi-spectrum at the same time.
Yeah, we're definitely kind of moving into that kind of sci-fi world, aren't we? But I think it's interesting to hear you talking about, ethics and kind of philosophy, because, when we start talking about absolute truth, that definitely, I think any philosopher kind of that's going to prick their ears.
Right.
So the final question is, AI is kind of a bit like a soap opera, in that people are obsessed with like the next big bit of news coming out. I know kind of there is a very big bit of news at Partsol, which came out recently, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But are there any other kind of big news stories which have caught your eye in the last week or two?
Not really. What I'm just amazed at, which is one of the reasons why we relocated over to Ireland and to Europe, is that the sheer volume of noise regarding AI in the States is deafening. So a company that has paradigm changing AI will never get the ear of anybody, because we have numbers like $100 billion being thrown around here and 40 billion over here and valuations of 300 billion here, that is specifically designed to keep squelched any type of a technology which could put at risk those behemoths.
This investment.
And so I just continually amused at the world right now arguing as to whose AI hallucinates less. When I mean, it's like a child telling their parents that they're okay because they lie less than their brother does. It's a lunatic type argument. And so right now I'm just kind of standing off to the back as a spectator, watching the kids argue. Ultimately, someone's going to talk about accuracy and move forward.
So just before we jump into Partsol, could you just give us a bit of an idea of your background? I'm kind of interested in your experience growing up and what led you from the Air Force to the AI industry.
Sure. So my background, I was business. I was an accountant. Then I got a master's in international business and a doctorate in business. But then in the mid 1980s, I accepted a commission in the United States Air Force, where I flew. And at that time in the Air Force, in the military, everything was status quo. And I have a very difficult time with status quo. And the worst thing with national security, or even with a government or with a corporation, is something called strategic surprise. That you wake up one day and something happens that you weren't prepared for. And so I had a theory that everything in the world was indelibly linked to supply chain. It's not just moving a widget from point A to point B. It's moving people, places, things, ideology, money. Everything has a supply chain. And if I can map it deep enough, I can predict activity and not be surprised. And with the help of companies around the world, I created these algorithms that map supply chain. So it started with algorithms that did something, but it was very manual, very bespoke. And I was happy doing, 4 efforts per month. But then COVID hit, and every global supply chain unraveled at the same time. And I found that my algorithms were the only things that could map things globally everywhere. Well, now I have a scaling problem. And so today, the majority of AI companies say they're going to do AI and then they create an algorithm. Well, what I did is I had the algorithm, I used AI to scale it. So it doesn't matter whether I go to quantum in 2 or 3 years or stay with AI. The AI is just an enabling and an empowering mechanism. It is not what makes the algorithms better. It makes it scale. And so that's how I stumbled into AI when everybody else collapsed, and I needed to go from 4 projects per month to literally tens of thousands per second. And the only way to do that is to use true artificial intelligence and true machine learning.
Yeah, okay. So that takes us nicely into Partsol. So before we talk about cognitive AI, do you want to talk about like the problem space? So like you already mentioned a little bit in terms of companies competing hallucinating the least, but obviously the LLM industry has kind of taken the world by storm. You know, what are the problems that you see with LLMs in relation to how companies are using them today?
Yeah, right now, I mean, and laying it all out, we use an LLM to do our report writing. But what I've found is that there are 4 verticals in the world where you have to have absolute accuracy 100% of the time. And that is national security, it's the fintech, the financial technology, legal technology, and health technology. And so building a business where you have this platform that can operate at 100% accuracy, you can have the problem of being everything to everybody and watch your business collapse. And so I had to choose what we are best optimized for. So I picked those 4 verticals. And so when it comes to know your customer, anti-money laundering, risk and vulnerability analysis, high patent infringement cases, pharma, all of those type of technologies, all those type of verticals that require 100% accuracy 100% of the time is where we are parking our company at this point.
And do you want to kind of describe cognitive AI and how that works, how you're able, to kind of aim at this concept of absolute truth?
Sure. So absolute truth. It was amusing when I was asked to present this last summer to a very large convention of lawyers, and I used the word absolute truth, and they all came unglued out of their chairs.
Yeah.
So I gave them a very simple challenge. For those that don't believe in absolute truth, go up on top of the skyscraper and jump. It doesn't matter whether you believe that gravity exists or not. It does. There are some things in the world that are absolute. And they understood that after that. And so what makes us different, and we won't go too deep in it because it's the IP, is that we found that instead of having AI that's being taught by humans in the case of DeepSeek, or taught by whatever else, where there's nuances and inaccuracies, if we can ground it to absolute truth, we call it AI stem cells. There are about 90 foundational scientific basics that if you ground everything to those and allow those to grow, they will in essence bind the AI so that it cannot hallucinate, because it will not be allowed to deviate outside of these multiple levels of science. So for example, if you were to take the stem cell of microbiology, cellular biology, and cancerogenesis and allow the AI to grow those out, that then becomes your boundary. So when you hit the 25th iteration of the evolution, you hit your first aberration, which is cancer. Now as you back it all the way to the science, everything that the world already mapped out for cancer, but now you're seeing all the other things that were never mapped out. Now you have probable earlier detection of cancer. But there is no hallucination. And so with cognitive AI, we have all of these stem cells moving, growing, intersecting. So think of it as thousands upon thousands of decision trees, which aren't completely parallel, that are intersecting along the line, and that by keeps your AI from hallucinating, and it also tells you that what someone is saying is absolute fabrication. So it's an amazing capability. We've already demoed it hundreds of times. We can't say it's 100% accurate because there is no certifying official for that. But what I can say is that we've used it hundreds of times in stealth, and it has yet to generate a single inaccuracy as we move forward. So we're pretty excited about it.
And are these kind of out-of-the-box solutions, or is this like a platform that kind of developers can build with?
Yeah, it's both. And so if someone wants to develop with it, yes, since we're already starting at foundational science and the decision trees have already been growing, much like a stem cell, we could have people come in, researchers, research labs, use the platform to actually confirm what they've already known. So in the case of, I can use research jargon, they can either confirm their hypothesis or confirm their null hypothesis, so they actually can prove where they want to go. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to discover multiple layers deeper than where they originally thought they were. Or someone can come to us with a problem, like a company came to us and said they wanted to an optimal location for their lithium carbonate plant. And the system already was able to map out all the distribution nodes, all the sources of lithium, all the sources of substrates and chemicals, and gave them the proper location of where they should put that to make that distribution most efficient. So it just depends on what someone wants to look at.
And how does it compare, against kind of other traditional AI solutions in terms of adaptability to different sectors? Like you mentioned, kind of 4 sectors that you're narrowing down on for now. Is that sort of forever for the company, or will it be able to scale and adapt to different industries as well?
Oh yes. And so to use an American example, if I'm going to go into a hardware store because I want to cut down a tree, I used to go in, I used to purchase a chainsaw and come out and use it. So now I have a chainsaw. And now if I want to go in and purchase a chainsaw, I first purchase a battery, because of the battery then will slap into the chainsaw. But then I can pull that battery out and use that for a lawnmower, or use it for, whatever. Since we have grounded everything to foundational science, the neural network, it's called Checkmate. The Checkmate neural network can actually be used across spectrum. As a business, we are using it for the 4 verticals, but when we go and locate somewhere, we stand up innovation nodes with local universities. So in the case of Ireland, we're standing up an innovation node with Trinity College and St. James Research Hospital to look at the intersection of AI, music, and cognitive degrade, because we found that we can actually map out the brain to help with Alzheimer's and stuff like that. We stood up a unit in the States, which is looking at commodities. We're standing up a unit in Dubai, which is looking at AI in manufacturing, supply chain. So as a business, we're focusing on those 4 verticals, but we are energizing universities that we're at with students, because the students are unjaded by what's going on in the world, to actually help us move forward with the other peripheral stuff. So no, we are never stopping.
And what are the kind of trade-offs here? Obviously you're going kind of 100% on kind of the accuracy and the kind of absolute truth. Are there kind of trade-offs you've had to make, and areas where you're weaker than an LLM solution?
I would say the only weakness that we are currently suffering through is the lack of $100 billion of funding, which is coming in.
Yeah.
If you say you're an LLM, be it even a country or whatever, there is an inordinate amount of money which is being thrown at you. That is the only weakness, because the LLM is by itself weak because of the data streams that it's using. It's using all data streams, and so since it doesn't have the capability of removing error, it could be the best LLM in the world, but it is slaved to its ability to ferret out inaccuracies. And so our capability ferrets out the inaccuracy. So what we do right now is that we have all the data coming in, it runs through the system, it cleanses it from error, filters it down to exactly what is known, and then we run it through an off-the-shelf LLM to actually do our reports and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so that's the only weakness that we have is the access to the $100 billion.
Okay, well, I guess that's something that hopefully you can address in the coming years as you kind of build momentum.
Right.
I mean, I noticed one of the interesting kind of claims on the website was talking about the time and cost savings. How do you want to talk about how you streamline the decision-making process for your customers?
Sure. So what it does is that it maps. It's not a graphics, and we use knowledge graphs, stuff like, but at its very core, it makes supply chain maps. And with the understanding that every problem, every solution, every attack, every defense, every person, every nation has its very detailed supply chain. And so if we were going from London to Edinburgh, I mean, the way you could do it is you could get your compass and you could just head north, and then ultimately you'll get there somehow. Or what you can do is you can take a napkin and, someone can draw in there how to get up there to Edinburgh, and it's okay. But, or you could get a Rand McNally road atlas, which lists all the streets and stuff like that. But think about the difference between taking a compass and now you have a GPS. With that GPS, you have all of the streets, you have all of the velocities, you have all of the construction, you have everything. So you can now make a trip from point A to point B in the most efficient, quick, cost-effective way. So what our system does, if it comes to the part of a solution, it maps out the supply chain of the problem, we'll say deeper than 20 levels from source. So now you have a map, and that map gives you everything you want to know between problem and solution, and you can now come up with the most efficiencies. And you talk about manufacturing, it might mean that you put a distribution node somewhere else. In the case of apparel, which we've done, it is discovering a new loom that is in Vietnam, which no one ever heard about, which will save you 2 fractions of a cent off of every single apparel. So it is the efficiencies of the totality, not just the efficiency of one problem.
And how do you see the kind of wider AI ecosystem evolving from here? Like how do you get kind of your story out about cognitive AI? Is it just kind of a marketing and distribution problem, or what's kind of the big drive from here?
Yeah, it's you can only do as much as you can. You can throw a lot of money at marketing and PR. You have to do that. You have to have a product that is good, very good. You have to have a team that is great. That being said, you have to do unconventional things in order to get your story out. And so for us, nobody believes that we can actually do what we do. And so last year, our company had to do more than probably £1 million or €1 million worth of proof of capabilities just for someone to believe it. So you have to spend money. But what we found is that if you do that once, you in essence have marketed information crack, because nobody will accept anything else after they've seen your product. But you have to be unconventional. You have to move from the States. to Dublin, Ireland, just to get out of the noise. You have to do whatever it takes to get yourself heard, because once you're heard and you deliver, then you build a following. And right now, we're starting to go viral through some of those 4 verticals. And so, but it took a while. It took a long while.
Because I guess once you get some of those customer references, you have the use cases, and that you can kind of
Yes.
build on that. But as you mentioned, I guess there's quite a kind of an education piece when you're talking to customers for the first time and asking them to do something which is completely at odds with what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I also found that I couldn't do conventional sales either, where you start at the lowest rung and work your way up. Our sales cycle was 9 to 12 months. A company can't survive that. And so what I found is I had to get to the decision makers, the CEOs, because every CEO in the world has a problem which keeps them awake at night. But they're not afraid, but they're afraid to tell someone because it'll affect share prices, it'll affect consumer confidence. And so if you could get access to the CEO, and so I've built a network of knowledge brokers which get me to them. Once you get there and you show them what you can do, at that point there, everything moves very, very fast. So we had to change a lot of the paradigms of sales and outreach because there's a lot of AI noise right now.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned kind of having to move out of the US. Is that just because you wanted to kind of fundraise in a different way, or was it just more from a kind of a strategic and marketing point of view? You wanted to get away from all that buzz and that noise?
Yeah, it was a strategic. We found that we've gotten capital. We raised 17.5 million last year. We're in the middle of another capital raise right now. Raising capital really isn't the problem. For us as an AI company, is getting above the buzz, but more importantly, is there are differences. I mean, AI, especially when you're a company like ours, which has AI plus data plus a lot of other things. Over in Europe, you have GDPR, the very strict data laws and data regulations. Instead of circumventing that, I made a decision that it's better to embrace it. And so moving in Dublin and then having our platform certified for GDPR gave us an opening to the world. And also the talent that is over here in Europe is much more readily available than what we were able to get over in the States. So that's what led us.
Yeah.
It was a strategic decision.
Yeah, and it kind of fits in, I suppose, with your kind of strategy on the technology side as well, like, bucking the kind of traditional trends, right, and trying to do things in a different way. One thing I wanted to kind of return to, if you like, you were talking about kind of ethics at the beginning of the podcast, and I'm interested, when we're talking about absolute truth, like what are the kind of ethical standards that you've built into your platform?
Yes, and so ethics, when you have a capability like the power of our system, it has the capability of doing great good. I mean, you can map cancer, you could do just a myriad of things which are ultimately very good. But you can also do multitudes of things which are ultimately evil. It is the whole thing. Do you kill a technology because what it could be used for an area bad? I had that ethical dilemma about 18 months ago when I finally woke up and I saw the power of the system, and it ran through my mind of, do I actually kill it? Just because it does have that kind of power. And I came to the decision that because of the good that it can do, we're going to do it, and we're going to move faster than anyone else in the world. So we get there first, and that way we set an ethical, moral, and a legal threshold that people either have to meet or they get exposed. And so yeah, we have a tremendous ethical policy, moral policy, and legal policy that I, as a CEO, will not deviate from one iota.
You're going to be kind of leading the way on this. I think it's obviously an important topic. You know, when people talk about kind of alignment in AI, obviously the challenge is there. So yeah, kind of interesting to kind of hear the approach that you're taking on that. I mean, when we're kind of thinking about predictive decision making, like with the AI platform, how does that work when we're thinking about industries where kind of uncertainty is baked in, if you like, you know, in risk management, in finance, like some of the industries that you mentioned, like how does kind of predictive decision making work there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of these days, maybe you and I'll get together and I'll show you the true power of the system. But the question itself is bounded by the era that you live in. And so let's transport ourselves back to 1850. What we know as being risk might be whether our crops grew well or not. Now we come forward, and especially in the area of tariffs and everything else we're talking about, whether your crops are growing, that's great, but you now have access to so much depth and information that you're able to look at weather patterns halfway around the world. You're looking at global warming. You're able to look at the way currency fluctuations happen a half a world away. And so your idea of what is risk for your business is now bounded by what you can glean from typical tools or platforms. With ours, we understand most tools or platforms will only go down 2 levels. Ours goes down, we'll just say, deeper than 20 levels of every single node that's on there. So one node has 20 levels. All of those 20 level nodes have their own 20 levels. So now all of a sudden, you're able to see an event that happens halfway around the world and understand how that ripples across decision trees. So all of a sudden, you're able to see how a mine in Brazil that mines niobium, how that's going to ripple into how Oxford University can move forward with its quantum computing, because it uses niobium for its Josephson junctions. So you're able to understand and predict months in advance versus a day or two in advance. And so it's a completely different paradigm. It's not a changing of a slope, it's completely moving that slope. And what I'm saying right now is not science fiction. We've already been doing that. And so it's an amazing capability.
So basically what we're saying is that kind of baked in uncertainty in some of these industries is going to be massively reduced using kind of models and predictive models.
It's going to be moved. It's going to be moved so further down your supply chain and your decision-making vertical that you're going to be able to decide on something based on a consequence of a consequence. Whereas right now, you wake up in the morning, you open up your newspaper, turn on your online, and you saw that something happened in Hong Kong, and you quick try to make a trade in a millisecond. You're going to be able to see something that happened half a world away and know that it's going to cause that ripple. That ripple is going to hit you in about 6 to 9 months. So it's pushing the decision and the risk downstream a lot further, or upstream a lot further.
And explainability is like a big topic in AI at the moment. You know, the LLMs are obviously like a kind of a black box in terms of understanding how they're reaching the kind of outputs that they're giving us. Presumably this, we can kind of map and follow it, and understand how the decision is being made.
It is. I mean, there's always IP is always, and trade secrets are always going to be somewhat hidden. But what you're going to be able to do, if I use the analogy, if you're going to train on and determine what is counterfeit currency, I'm not giving you a lot of counterfeit pounds or euros or whatever else. I'm giving you an authentic one. And once you know what is the true euro or pound, you can spot fakes. And so what this will do is it will enable you to know what LLMs are more trustworthy than others. It'll be able to give you verticals where it might be better than other verticals. So for example, if you're looking at the best way of moving money, just saying, well, I'm just going to put it in a Western Union and send it, that might work if you're going to one country. Another country might be SWIFT, another country might be, informal stuff. It might be crypto. So it's just giving it's giving the person that's using the LLM the ability to know whether they should trust it or not.
Yeah, okay. And so if we just kind of switch into the kind of company building kind of process and thinking about how you go about building a startup, like you mentioned, every CEO's got something that keeps them awake at night. You don't have to say what's keeping you awake right now, but like over the last year, 2 years, say, what was the kind of biggest challenges that you've been facing?
Yes, I mean, so for me, it came down to capital raise, in that if you want to build the type of system that we have, it's going to take very unique people. People are extremely expensive, but if you get the right one, that's going to cost you money. And so with me, it was getting the right people, and why that's important is you need to find people that it's okay to fail. I was getting very high technology people, but if they didn't understand what you want, they conformed what they already knew what they could do into what they thought you wanted. And so getting good people, once you have the good people, you got to pay those good people. You got to make sure that those people aren't poached by a Google or an Amazon. And so what kept me awake was payroll. You have to be able to pay them.
Yeah.
Most CEOs that I talk to from startups, it's payroll. So once we had our funding and we had our good people and we built loyalty, now it's just more of making sure I could be heard through the din of noise. So
Getting connections to that right kind of exact level. Yeah. And obviously every startup has to draw a balance between having a product which is scalable, but then also being agile enough to meet different customer needs and maybe building bespoke solutions if it's a good enough customer. Like how are you thinking about striking that balance?
Yeah, see, I was actually very fortunate in that I created the algorithms to solve a national security vertical issue. So over the decades, I was able to create these algorithms, refine these algorithms, tweak these algorithms, test the algorithms on multiple different use cases of depth, complexity. And so at that point there, I wasn't like a typical startup that said, I've got a great idea. I'm going to see if I can do this. So I was already mapping supply chains. I was already using these. I wasn't confronted, a global crisis, COVID, hit the world, and people that I was already doing bespoke work for came to me and said, look, you need to scale because we need you on all of our operations globally, and you need to be able to scale till thousands of second. And so we went into it of people telling us where we needed to go in a viral existential way. We still had to get there, but I didn't have to go and build a loyal customer base. I already had it. I just needed to build a technology. Our biggest problem came in that the technology was better than what we expected. And so I am now suffering. I'm trying to survive success. And people laugh at that, but we've got technology. Now I got to build out help desks, sales desks, everything that a company is. I had an incremental way of doing it, but because of the way that our technology is, the slope has to go almost straight up. And I'm trying to survive success at this point.
So obviously the kind of big launch was kind of last week where you kind of released this into the world. What's the kind of big focus for the next 2 months, say?
Next 2 months is actually standing up the global commercial headquarters in Dublin, Ireland. That's going to be the sales desk, the help desks. When I first decided to our global commercial headquarters in Ireland, I was looking at 15 people. But now, just because of the viral demand in Europe and the Middle East and Southwest Asia, we're looking at 60 to possibly 80 people over there by the end of second to third quarter of next year. So that to me is my focus for the next 2 months. We're going to have a huge ribbon cutting, unveiling, launch in Ireland, probably the second or third week of September. And that then is going to be when everybody had better remember that day, what they were doing on that day, because that's the day when Partsol just took off. And so that's where we're going.
Yeah, exciting times. So just last question, what advice would you have for kind of other entrepreneurs out there in the AI industry who've got a good idea? What's the kind of biggest tip you would give them?
I would say stay true to yourself. Don't listen to all the buzz and the noise. It will discourage you incredibly. If you have a great idea and you believe in that idea and other people believe, keep moving, because the noise is designed to squelch any kind of innovation. What I have found is that if you start delving into that great noise, you're going to find it's nothing but paper tigers. I had one big competitor that came to me and said, we now do error-free AI for legal. And so when I took a look at it, because it was disheartening to know that when I started taking a look at it, we found out that what they did is they did error-free AI for citations only. Well, anyone could do a citation. So the noise of the big behemoths are designed to discourage, dissuade, and deter entrepreneurs from actually moving forward. Stay true to yourself and don't be afraid of being unconventional.
Oh, great stuff. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Darryl. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you? Where do you live?
Yeah, just go on the website, www.partsol.com, and they'll be able to get me.
Great stuff. Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you to everybody watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.